Thanks, Kyle. 02, Cameron.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Cameron Williams, Traffic Engineer for the City of Tyler. So we have a couple different two ordinance items. The first one here is on speed limit amendments. So this is just real quick. These amendments really cover a couple different things. So there is actually a change in the ordinance for Old Bullard Road from Amherst Street to Old Jacksonville Highway. And the rest of this is just really cleanup. The last time that there were any ordinance changes to this section of our code was 2017. So we tried to go through, do some cleanup to look at segments of roadway that are no longer present in the city, modifications to some names, just some cleanup on some discrepancies, and then there are some existing streets that were never put into our code. And so added those. I'll give you a brief overview of that real quick. So here's the list of the streets that have changes. Old Bullard Road, we'll talk about that one specifically because that's the only one where we're doing a change and we're actually reducing the speed limit on that roadway. The rest of these are clarifying limits, descriptions. West Cumberland Road, for example, at the bottom, that was constructed by the city and it's been posted out there at 40 miles per hour, but has never, 40 and 45, but has never been put in our ordinances. And just as kind of a reference, by default, every street in the city is 30 miles per hour unless we set an ordinance to change it higher than that. And so that kind of gives you a little context. To talk specifically about Old Bullard Road. So this came as a request from some of the residents along Old Bullard Road. We're looking at really Amherst Street up to Old Jacksonville Highway is the limits. So it is the speed limit varies from 35 to 40 miles per hour in this area. It is a collector. So you do anticipate it's going to carry a little bit more traffic. The whole idea of a collector is you're funneling traffic from residential neighbor streets and getting them up to like a bigger roadway. It is a wider street, 36 feet face to face. It is, but all the zoning along it is residential. So you got houses at front. There's sidewalk, varies throughout there. There's actually not a whole lot of sidewalk. We did some traffic counts, and so you see there about 2,700 vehicles per day, but there is a lot of driveway density as far as residential driveway. Not a whole lot of crash history in that area, but again, the idea of residential uses and the driveway density is kind of what led to some of our recommendations here. So we did a lot of, this is just a lot of data as far as speed that we collected to look at what's going on out there today. Don't want to spend a whole lot of time there, but ultimately our recommendation, because of the lack of sidewalks, the residential nature of the street, and the driveway density, to lower that to 30 miles per hour. And I will kind of pause and say, historically, the engineering approach has been to use what we call the 85th percentile. And that 85th percentile says when people are driving free flow, they don't have anybody around them, they feel what's a safe speed, 85% of the people will drive at that speed or lower. Now, that creates problems in your residential areas. There's more of a safety concern that we need to take into consideration with the land uses. And so this is really a different approach, first time that we're using this criteria to look at setting our speed limits that really addresses citizens' concerns and the safety on how those are being used. So, with that, it is recommended that City Council adopt an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 17 by adding, modifying, or removing speed limits for East Irwin Street, FM 2767, Loop 323, North Church Avenue, Old Bullard Road, Palace Avenue, Pleasant Retreat Road, Skidmore Lane, South Vine Avenue, State Highway 155, US 271, and West Cumberland Road.
Any questions for Cameron?
Cameron, I just want to say thank you for your work on this project. I know it's been in the works for a while, so thank you for your patience and bearing with us on getting this done. Just for reference, in case people go back and look at the ordinance and coinciding with what you said earlier, I noticed in the ordinance that from Amherst North there was no mention of the change, and that's because the default is 30, so that's why there wasn't a red line change for that. So if anybody goes back and looks at the ordinance changes, that's why, correct?
Correct. So when you look at the actual language of the ordinance, so we're actually striking out Old Bullard Road from our ordinance list from Amherst Street up to Old Jacksonville, because that then becomes a default of 30 miles per hour.
Right. Okay. Well, again, thank you for your work on this. I appreciate it.
Cameron, on the 85th percentile, is the thinking here that lowering the speed limit is going to also lower the 85th percentile?
That is a great question. Honestly, probably not. There will be a percentage of the population who see that speed limit sign at 30 miles per hour, and they are going to obey that, and they're going to observe that. And so I think you will see a drop in some of that free flow speed. There are others that are going to drive the speed that they feel comfortable. Old Bullard Road is 36 foot wide. There's not a whole lot of parking that occurs on that.
Right.
So really, this is a first step. Back last fall, we instituted our traffic calming policy, or you think of it as a speed management policy. One of the criteria that we put in there is we will only look at a street if it's 30 miles per hour posted. If it's 35 or higher, we won't look at applying any of those techniques for reducing speed. And so in this case, this is kind of the first step. If, say, we implement this, which we will, assuming that it passes, go back out there and restudy. If that 85th percentile is 36 or 40 miles per hour, then how can we apply some of those traffic calming techniques to then lower the speed? Because in my opinion, those more geometric approaches or striping changes to help make that road feel more narrow will then start people impacting how they drive.
And I know you're not responsible for enforcement, but what does the city do? You know, it's been 35 in a large section for a long time. It's going to 30 for the citizens to know. You know, I hate for somebody to go out day one and go, well, I mean, when did that change? Today.
Sure. So we will change the signage, get that posted, and probably likely we'll add some orange flags or something to that to make it a little bit more visible. And I'll probably speak for the police department, but and they can probably speak for themselves. But typically, I've seen anytime you change an ordinance, they usually do some type of soft grace period. They do some warnings before they actually start doing ticketing of any sign.
Thank you, Cameron.
Cameron, I see the majority of that traffic in the morning. It's a cut through, people getting off Broadway, going to school, going to work, and then in the afternoons. During the day, I don't see it now. I drive it some during the day, but I think it will help. But, you know, human nature's human nature.
Correct. And again, that's where we put together that traffic calming policy so that it's a slow process and it's step by step. But I think those are the things that we can look in the future. How can we start putting physical things that help change those behaviors?
Any other questions for Cameron?
No other questions? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't have any cards. We do have one resident that lives on Old Bullard Road. Do you want to speak, or you don't have to? But if you do, you got to come up. You don't have to. Okay, we're good.
I move to approve then, if no other questions.
Exactly. Got a motion by Haney, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 03.
So 03, so this is also